Hello everybody and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for today. Today we talk about how happiness and habits can be connected and some examples from the team. This is definitely one of our funnier episodes, so if you want to laugh and learn something, then today's a great episode. Enjoy and have a magical week. Hello everybody and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. I hope everybody that's listening is having a good time. I hope you enjoyed our little episode with Grahame as well that you should have heard by now, and that was a fun different one. If you haven't heard that one, go check it out. It's a really fun episode about her lessons from turning 80 years old. But before we get into today's podcast, let's go around the room and see how everyone's going. So John, how are you going today?
Doing well, Jess. It's been a good week. Did some teaching last week, and we had some feedback this week on it. And it's just interesting what people focus on. It's rather than focusing on what they could actually take away and improve, it's what they didn't like, which is all good, but really, so glass is half full or half empty, I guess.
That's it. Well, anyway, good to have you. And for those watching, Johnny's in a different location today. So that's exciting. You know, a little bonus feature for those watching. That's it. Exactly. Mixing it up. Love that, John. Al, how are you going today?
I'm going great, and it's getting better all the time. I'm just appreciating the feedback I got yesterday, John, where I was out at a farm at Dolby helping put a machine together, and everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. Took a lot longer than it should have done, as in a second trip out there. Yet when I finished, the guys at the farm were just so grateful that I was the one dealing with that problem and not them.
Can understand that, Al. Yeah.
Well, good job, Al. And also, Al, we just before the podcast started, we got a little update on your e-foil journey. So do you want to update the listeners on how that's going?
Yes, it's going really well. I've learnt to ride it sitting down really well, and building up the confidence where I'm starting to stand up and learn to ride it, I guess what most people would say, properly.
Well, good for you, Al, and we look forward to hearing more about that journey. It sounds very interesting.
I'll keep you updated, Jess.
I'm curious, Al, as to whether you've had formal notification from your ribs that they are leaving.
I'm at the 6-week mark since they broke, so technically I've crossed that line.
Fingers crossed.
Yes.
But if you wake up one morning feeling just a little bit sort of shallow there, you'll know why.
And that is the sultry tones of Grahame. Grahame, how are you going today?
I'm good, cheers. E-foils. I have no idea what it is, but it sounds like fun. Look, we're at home. It's been a busy week, but we have birthday party for our granddaughter tomorrow, so that's exciting. And then Danette's bringing a beehive home so that they can sting me to death. So I'm pretty pumped about all of that.
A thrilling weekend ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Danette, how are you going?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jess. I've been to Canberra this week for a bit of coaching, and then yesterday I had full day of workshop. So the client was in Queensland, so finished at 5:30 p.m. yesterday afternoon. So that was a full-on day. Very excited about getting the bees this weekend and Miss Aubrey's first birthday. So that's going to be so much fun. And Mum, so Gran, for those of you who've listened to the podcast, is meeting Aubrey for the first time. So that'll be exciting tomorrow as well at the party. So we'll take some photos and we'll put them up on social media.
Yeah, and for those listening, it'll be a weird time moment because those photos may already be up by the time you're hearing this. So this could be a bit of a, but who knows?
That's pretty cool. How was your week, Jess?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Pretty busy, fair bit of work, but I'm writing jokes at the moment for this show that's on in Sydney called it's not the Nightly News. It's with Osher, who hosts The Bachelor. So if you go see that show and you hear any good jokes, I wrote them. So that's all that's important.
Look forward to that one, Jess.
Yeah. And that's going to be at the Comedy Fest as well. So you can check out tickets if you want to go to it. It just makes me look good if you're in Sydney and go to it. I messaged him because I saw he put up a video about it, and I've written jokes for another TV show. before, and the jokes that he put up were okay. I was like, I could probably do something slightly better than this. So I shot him some, and he's like, "Yep, this is good because I don't have anyone else on the team at the moment." So, yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So it all
Well
worked
done.
out.
That's
Thanks.
so cool.
Well done, Chess. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
Thanks.
By
You
the
never know
way,
where
if
that'll
you
lead.
if you happen to use Mr. Hunt in any references in your comedy material, just remember we get a commish. Okay.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
This is why Jez is writing them and not you, Grahame.
Wow.
Oh,
It had to
snap.
come out eventually. It had to come out eventually. But you're absolutely correct, John. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, today, before we actually get into the topic, we wanted to do some more. Our social media manager Kanika did suggest that this would be a good idea, that we should touch on our monthly themes on social media in our podcast as well, because they'd sort of been a little bit, not exactly aligned. But today we are aligning them in a very fun way. So this month our theme is goals and habit setting, which is a great theme. And so today we're going to be talking about the connections between habits and happiness, which I thought was a kind of fun way to look at it. But before we get into that conversation, Danette, you have an ML recommendation.
I do. I was so excited. This morning I went into Cootamundra, which is our local town, and found this book called Feeling Grateful. And one of the habits I know that is absolutely awesome is gratitude. So I saw this book and I'm like, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to have a read of it. And it's one of those gorgeous illustrated books. So it's about how to add more goodness to your gladness. And it is written by Kobi Yomanda. Beautiful. So I just thought I'd share two of the pages that I read and just went, actually, that's really good about gratitude and happiness. The first one basically says, simplify, not much is needed for happiness. And you can just see the bear floating. And I really like that idea of simplifying, because life, the more stuff we have, the more complicated it often becomes. And then I really love this one, which talks about, and hopefully you can see it, admire the beauty and value of others without questioning your own. So often people get into that whole habit of comparison, which is not a good habit. This is about lifting others up and knowing that you're good enough as well. So ML recommendation, Feeling Grateful by Kobi Yomanda.
Wow, that looks awesome, and the illustrations in that looked amazing.
Stunning.
Yeah, for that second one, for people that are just listening, it was a bear looking into the water from the underwater perspective at a fish, but it looked
Yeah.
really, really nice. That was awesome.
And let me acknowledge the illustrator, which is Charles Santoso. So Charles Santoso.
Cool.
Beautiful illustrations.
Awesome. Well, that was a great ML recommendation. Sorry, Grahame, you were going to say?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say the first illustration that Danette shared there of the bear floating in the water, for some reason, I don't know why, maybe it's Friday, just reminded me of Al post e-foil.
Probably quite accurate at times, Graham.
But at least you were happy and feeling grateful. At least I hope you were.
I think Al was thinking he needed to simplify as well there.
Oh, yes. And not compare myself to those guys that are riding big waves and doing all those things my ego wants to do.
Awesome. Well, yeah, awesome. That looks like a great book, and we'll link that in the description so you can go check that one out. But today, let's talk about the connection between habits and happiness, which I thought is a kind of fun topic. And I might start with you, John. What are some good habits that you have that have increased your overall happiness?
Oh, probably very few. There are two that jump to mind, really. One was turning my devices off, and turning the TV off for that matter as well. It's just we get into a habit here of cooking dinner and then eating dinner in front of the TV, and there are nights where it just gets turned off, and I don't know, there's conversation, or you end up outside, might be weeding the garden or doing other things that it's just nice and relaxing. And the other one has always been, for the habit I've always had, is sport or fitness. And it started, with team sports when I was younger. And then you get to a point where you can't be as competitive as you think you should be. But maintaining that fitness. So, it's running groups and or walking groups even. And that's blended into meeting a whole heap of different people that have come and gone out of our running group over the last 15, 20 years that I wouldn't normally have met. And you have conversations when you run, and you learn things about people, then you go for coffee afterwards. And our running group, because we're all getting older, has also turned into a running group and a walking group. So you've got, again, a different set of people, or wives or husbands of the runners who walk. So yeah, you catch up and you talk, and it just, I don't know, it's just been good to get out, and you're out in nature, you're out with people, just so many positives to it.
That's such a good one, John. And I think also, I love how you've talked about how also that group has grown and changed as well. I think that's that also sounds like its own interesting part of it as well.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the group is nowhere near what it was to begin with. There were two of us, I think, they've been going for about 15, 20 years together. And we've done other things together as well. But yeah, the group is so different to where it started.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks for that, John. Al, I'm going to throw to you. What are some good habits that you have that have increased your overall happiness?
Well, the plan was the e-foil, which I guess fits in with what John's saying about getting out, getting exercise. And now that it's 6 weeks since my ribs have been broken, they are technically healed, and I'm ready to give that another whirl. Interesting, the first thing that came up for me when I saw this question was I didn't have anything that I was aware of that I was doing. It was more I had stopped so many other things, which relates to what Danette was just saying about simplifying life, where I'd stopped being busy. I'd stopped worrying about what other people thought, trying to make them happy. And where I came to there was kindness was a big one for me. When I started being kind to the people around me, that really made the biggest difference. And the question I asked myself when I left somebody was, how did I leave them feeling? And initially, I'd left them feeling angry, frustrated, a whole heap of negative emotions, which I had no awareness around. But once I had that awareness, I could check in to see, and actually focus, how am I going to leave this person feeling? And that's really turned things around for me, because yeah, when I leave them feeling happy as opposed to angry, it's so much better sharing a house with somebody who's happy.
Yeah, that's a great other, I guess, flip side to this is habits that you have stopped that create better things in your life. I think that's awesome, Al. Great
It is,
answer.
yeah. That I got that from Grahame. There was a few hints actually where Grahame said awareness is 99% of the journey, and eventually I got it one day where there was a whole heap of things that I wasn't aware of that weren't making me happy, weren't making the people around me happy.
Awesome. Well, yeah, love that, Al. Thanks so much for that one. Grahame, what are some good habits that you have that have increased your overall happiness?
I started making a list and then realised that if we wanted to get technical about it, a lot of these are not habits. They should be. But if we interpret a habit as something that you do consistently and regularly, then these are all opportunities for me to reintroduce them, maybe as habits. So just a couple of really quick ones: playing guitar and singing. Something I love to do. I enjoy doing it. We have a good friend of ours, Kay, who lives in Sydney, who we occasionally get together, and Kay plays ukulele and guitar, and she's got an awesome voice, and I love that. Absolutely love that. We can spend 3 or 4 or 5 hours in that, and it always uplifts me. The other thing I wrote down was the 5 a.m. club, which Danette and I were heavily into for a long time. And again, it's just a brilliant way of starting your day. And the third one, really quickly, was just wandering in nature. A little trickier at the moment because I'm hyper alert to snakes. So it just doesn't seem quite as much fun as it does in the middle of winter, when you can just wander through a paddock and you don't really have to worry about anything other than stepping in something a cow might have left behind. So they're probably my 3 of my top ones.
Nice. And yeah, they're all good ones as well. And I think that walking in nature one, I think it also comes back to kind of what John's talking about. But I think that in of itself is its own, like, such a good habit. So I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And thanks for that, Grahame. Danette, what are some good habits that you have that have increased your overall happiness?
So one is something that my father's mum, Granny Jock, encouraged me from when I was little, which was to read. So I don't think there's a day I don't read something. And for me, that's about learning. It's sometimes it's fiction, and it's just understanding human nature and enjoying, immersing myself in stories. So that always makes me happy. Another thing I love to do, and it's usually every second day at the moment, is get out in the morning and water my veggie patch and fill up the bird bath. So I'm outside, I'm seeing the growth in the vegetables that I've got going at the moment. So I've got tomatoes, I've got basil growing, pumpkins, which is really cute. At the moment, they're all about this big, some corn, some rocket, broccoli. So there's a whole stack of stuff that every second day I go out and I just go, wow, that's amazing. So that's a beautiful habit. And this habit, usually I do every 6 months, but I definitely do it before the beginning of a new year, is I look at my calendar and I book in my holidays before the year starts. So before it gets too busy, and then I don't have time for holidays. So that for me makes me happy, because it also is going to different places, and I love that. What about you, Jez?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess for me, the habits that I try and do is each day I just try and find something that isn't necessarily to do with work that I want to do, and just try and do that. It can be different, basketball, maybe doing a bit of comedy, or anything like that. But I feel like as long as I have that sort of as something that I'm doing to break up the day, at least then I feel like something has nurtured my soul that day, even though work is really fun, I do need sometimes just to do my own thing. So yeah, that's something I like to do.
Nice.
Danette, let's jump on to question 2 here, I reckon. How does forming good habits impact our overall happiness and life satisfaction?
I sort of think of this a little bit like a recipe. So when we bring in good habits, it's making that recipe nicer. Whereas if we put in lots of bad habits, eventually what you get is ugh. So for me, putting those good habits, one, they become automatic. But the other thing is that they're just giving you that thing that lifts your energy a little bit happier, brings those smiles out. Like Al said, the kindness, the ripple effect on others. And, if you're happy, absolutely that's going to impact others around you. So, yeah, that's my answer.
Love it. And that's a great metaphor. Love that. Grahame, I'll throw to you now. How does forming good habits impact our overall happiness and life satisfaction?
A great question, and I love the idea of the recipe. I just wrote down baking a beautiful life cake. Cheesy,
Love
yes.
that.
You might be able to weave that into some of your comedy. Just one thing I wrote down before about good habits was this idea of self-efficacy. We can get stuff done. So implementing a habit that is good for us is one way of strengthening our, it's almost like our self-image, or the story that we carry around about whether or not we're capable. Because one of the things that can trigger creation of bad habits is when we have a negative sort of self-image, or a poor self-image. So I think the idea of being able to implement a habit that's good for you can increase your sense of self-worth, and the fact that you can get stuff done. And yeah, I can do something hard, because creating any habit, particularly a good one, isn't necessarily an easy thing to do to start with. The other thing was just looking at the impact on brain structures, and the endorphins, the chemical change in us from having a good habit. And we're more likely to be in a positive frame of mind more of the time, which obviously makes their brain 31% more productive and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome,
Did
Grahame.
any of that make sense?
It did, actually, and I was gonna just sort of, I guess, follow up. I guess just quick follow up on that is, you were saying that forming a habit is hard, and I think that's something that we often forget.
Yeah.
Is there any extra information you have on that, like sort of the difficulty of forming a habit?
I think there's a couple of really good books if people are interested. One's called Atomic Habits by James Clear, brilliant book. The other is Tiny Habits, written by B.J. Fogg, Fogg. And both talk about this idea of sort of habit stacking. But for me, the metaphor of creating a new habit, and the reason it's hard, is because we are getting our brain to do something different. And our brain likes doing the same thing because it saves energy. It's always looking to conserve energy. So if I want to do something new and I've never done it before, that requires more energy. Now, if the circumstances are right, I can actually create a new habit relatively quickly. But if the circumstances aren't ideal, it could take a long time. And every day I try and create or recreate that task or that action, whatever. It's like walking from one side of a field to the other. And let's say it's a 200-meter journey, so it's not that far, but the grass is 4 feet high. So the first time you try to get from that side to the other, it's really, really hard. But if I keep at it, it gets a little bit easier each day. And after 6 months, I've got this well-worn path, and I can get from this side to the other side really easily. So that's sort of like a habit. But if I decide tomorrow that I actually want, instead of going that direction, I want to go in another direction. For those of you who are not on video, I'm pointing in a completely different direction just to sort of set the scene. So I'm walking through 4-foot high grass again. It's really hard. And halfway through the journey, on maybe the first or second day or the third day or the second week, when I've had a really crap day and I haven't got a lot of energy, my brain says to itself, hang on a sec, there's a clearer, easy path over there. So I'm just going to get back to that one. So it's one of the reasons why creating new habits does take time. And sometimes our brain is not our friend in doing that. And yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that, Graham. I think that's always a good reminder as well that, if you don't get a habit on the first day, that is totally part of the journey.
Keep at it.
Yeah. Al, how does forming good habits impact our overall happiness and life satisfaction?
Just, I guess, carrying on from what Grahame was saying there, Jez, one of the big, I guess, reasons I put effort into is when I learnt that our brain is designed to keep us safe. It's designed to focus on the problem and keep us away from danger. And even occurred to me as Grahame was talking then, so are the people around me. So when I wanted to get this e-foil, one of the big reasons was I wanted to get outside, be on the water. That's a happy place for me. I'm getting exercise. And the very first time I rode it, when I broke my ribs, I came home. The tribe around me said, oh, well, you won't be doing that again. And again, that makes it really difficult. And I was picturing Graham's analogy with walking through that grass. The reason I walk through that grass is because I have a vision on the other side that there's a happy place there where there's lots of people on e-foils out on the water, just loving life.
Yeah, and I love that, Al, and that's a great part of it as well, is like having that strong vision of what you actually kind of want out of it. That's what's keeping you going through this. So that's awesome.
It is. It's similar to what Danette was saying with that recipe. Like to me, what first came up is my brain will eat dirt or what's left in the fridge, which a lot of that should probably go in the bin. Whereas to plan that, I can make some really beautiful food and really enjoy that healthy meal, which again just leads to more happiness.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Al. And I love that the e-foil has become such a powerful theme in this podcast today. It's good stuff. John, I'll throw it to you. How does forming good habits impact our overall happiness and life satisfaction?
For me, creating good habits adds value to what's already existing in my life. So, and if you can see that it's a good habit, it reinforces positivity. And boosts your self-esteem. So, it just reinforces a positive version of you, I guess, is what I see. Going back to what Grahame and Alan were talking about, we forget as kids, we learn to walk by crawling and standing up and falling down and standing up and falling down and taking a step and falling down. And it takes time and time and time. As adults, we want all that immediate stuff now. We want to be able to play the guitar really well now. I don't want to have to work for it. And we forget that a good habit or a bad habit does take time. So you've got to put in the effort. And are you prepared? How hard are you prepared to work? Because that's really what it comes down to. But on the other side of that, you get through and you become a decent guitar player or foil rider or whatever it may be. To me, it's that positivity that I did that. How good am I? Pat yourself on the back and right, what's next? And constantly get uncomfortable with life because, the difference between a rut and a grave is the depth.
That's a good point there, John. I love that. Well, I guess it's sort of bouncing back on the opposite side of that. I think we'll just throw to you for question 3, which is how can forming good habits lead to a positive spiraling effect where one good habit leads to another, increasing happiness, and what could that look like?
Yeah, well, it's, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. So, if you want to get good at something, start. And it may lead to not just guitar, it may lead to other musical instruments. It may lead to meeting up with people like your friend in Sydney, Grahame, who, you sit down and play music with, and it, can lead to a band. It can lead to whatever you want it to be. But none of that happens unless you start. And for me, for the running group, as I said, I've met amazing people. We sit down and talk and have a go at each other and laugh and carry on, and it's created great friendships. So just simply by running, I've created a whole ream of friends that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And that's just, that's something that you may not have even gone in with that idea. You may have gone in with just people that you want to keep you accountable for running, and then all of a sudden you walk away with friends. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one more than I had before.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, thanks for that, John. Great answer. Al, I'll throw to you. Can forming good habits lead to a positive spiraling effect where one good habit leads to another, resulting in increased happiness? And what could that look like?
Absolutely, Jazz. Like just when you and John are talking about, meeting people and meeting new friends, that's something I'm noticing, say, from being kind. And the other one for me is curious. I am blown away daily by the people I meet where I'm being curious about their lives, and I learn so much about them, what they're into, and I'm meeting people that would have just passed by. And I guess the other big standout for me is in our house being kind. It's I guess I wasted so much time trying to change everybody else in the house, get them to do things, where when I can be kind, they're changing automatically, and our house is a much nicer place for everybody to live.
Yeah, awesome, Al. And I think that's and Graham's given a little heart reaction there as well. That's beautiful. Grahame, I'll throw to you now. Can forming good habits lead to a positive spiraling effect where one good habit leads to another, resulting in increased happiness? And what could that look like?
So I think the short answer is yes, absolutely. And again, I go back to this idea of habit stacking that James Clear wrote about in Atomic Habits, where he suggests that if you want to create a new habit, take an existing habit that you already have and link the new one to that somehow. John was talking about how to eat an elephant. I think if you had a vision, Al's vision of walking across the other side of the field to, I'm hoping there's some water there, Al, because I know do e-foils work in paddocks, to where there's a group of people just out there riding e-foils and their ribs are all intact and they're having a wonderful time. So I think, if we have a vision of something in our life that's not necessarily bigger than Ben-Hur, but there's a lot of change necessary to get there, then break it down. Because trying to change everything overnight never works, like never, because it's too hard. It's just too hard. So break it down into small steps. And the other thing, and this goes back to John's point about babies learning to walk. And it also ties into one of the things that Al talked about having people who support you. One of the things that happens for infants and babies, when they first start to walk or try to walk and they face plant, not one person around them says, "Oh, don't do that again." All we do is offer encouragement. All we do is pick them up, dust them off, and help them go again. And then they take 3 steps and they fall down, and we pick them up and say, "You can do this." So all we ever get is support and encouragement. And then later on in life, often we end up with a group of people who, for whatever reason, don't do that. So I think the other thing, if you want to create new habits, find an accountability buddy or a success buddy. It doesn't matter what you call them, but just work with somebody who trusts you, that you trust, who understands why you want to change or why you want to introduce new habits, and help them hold you accountable and support you and pick you up when you fall over. Because again, it's so hard to do this on our own.
Great stuff there.
Soapbox moment ended.
I think that was a great answer, and it's also kind of inspired, I guess, in me. Like, this is kind of a slightly different metaphor, but if you ever play a video game, you can't beat the final boss at the beginning of the game because you don't have any of the tools, you don't have any of the skills, even as a player or anything. But the point of the game is that as you go through, you build up all these different things, you get new skills, maybe new weapons, it doesn't matter, and then you will have the skills and the equipment to actually take on whatever that big challenge is at the end of the game.
I like the metaphor. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
It's a little bit more related to my life than recipes, but I do agree the recipe one is a good one. Awesome. Well, Danette, let's throw to you here for the final question, which is, can forming good habits lead to a positive spiraling effect where one good habit leads to another, resulting in increased happiness? And what could that look
So absolutely, yes, because again, that recipe, it's a positive ingredient. It's going to help. To give another example about that habit stacking, one of the things they talk about is link it to something that you already do. So at the beginning of COVID, I decided I wanted to do push-ups. And so I started with, I think it was 5, and I linked it to, I did it before I hopped in the shower in the morning. And pretty quickly I got up to 100, and I've since let it drop. So now I'm going to bring that one back into my life and just start small. One of the things to think about too is, what areas of your life do you want to work on? So is it more physical, like John was talking about, and Al were talking about, the running, the walking, the e-kite? Did I get that right, Al?
E-foil.
E-foil. Close. I've got to look up what it is because I have no idea what it is at the moment. So.
I'm wondering if I can create the e-kite.
I can hear the wheels turning around in his head, and Al's thinking, "Oh, there's a patent in this. There's money.
Awesome.
There's death in this, Al."
No, let him have a go. I reckon it's awesome.
I like your attitude, Danette.
So I think physical, emotional, spiritual, and spiritual is not necessarily religious. It could be just getting out in nature, and also intellectual. So which areas of your life do you want, some change in, and which habits could support in those physical, emotional, spiritual, and intellectual? Because at the end of the day, life, we leave life with nothing. So we can't take anything away with us, except probably the impact we have on others and ourselves. And so being kind, creating habits that are kind to us helps have that ripple effect to others as well. So for me, please do it. I reckon the world needs everyone to be a little bit happier and a little bit, self-kind to each other, to themselves. So I didn't say that particularly well. So just do it.
Awesome. Yeah, and love that as well, Danette. Danette, I'll get just any final thoughts you have today on the conversation or the connection between habits and happiness.
Yep. So this is just a suggestion. If you're a little bit stuck, there's a tool called the Wheel of Life, which you can just Google, and it goes through the different areas of your life, and you rate from 1 being not so great through to 10 awesome. So you can work out where your life's a little bit out of whack, and then think of what habits might you bring in those areas to actually boost your happiness, so it has a flow-on effect across your life, and then obviously on others as well.
Love that, and I'll find that and link that in the podcast description, so you don't have to go Google it.
Nice,
But
thanks,
that's a great tool, and I think people, if you're feeling a bit stuck, definitely go use that. Grahame, I'll throw to you. Final thoughts on today's conversation or the connection between habits and happiness.
If I can just go back to one thing that John mentioned before, you just have to start. So I think start small, because again, trying to implement big change so hard, it usually doesn't work. So start small, but start.
Perfect. That's awesome, and it's a good point. And so, definitely everybody, if you're listening, go start some new habits that you want to actually work on. I think that's a great point. Al, I'm going to throw to you. Final thoughts on the conversation today or the connection between habits and happiness.
I'm thinking adding on to just start, and it's what Grahame was saying before about having a great accountability buddy or a team of champions around you, because it's hard enough getting past that negative voice in our head. We need that somebody externally who can acknowledge those little steps along the way as an achievement. A bit like you're saying in the video game, our mind wants to get straight to the big battle at the end, but we don't appreciate, or often we can miss that 100 little steps that got us there.
Yeah, and that's also a good thing to think about even now is, think about where you are right now and all the little steps you've already taken is also a good thing because you're already on a journey right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And John, final thoughts on today's conversation or the connection between habits and happiness?
So to me, habits, creating a new habit or happiness, it's a choice. and it's how hard are you prepared to work, or how bad do you want it, and then how hard are you prepared to work for it. And yeah, I think you need to answer that. But yeah, happiness is a choice, and if you can improve your habits, it actually helps with that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John. And thank you, everybody, on today's call. What a great conversation. I love that we're back in the swing of doing the podcast now. It's so good. To everybody that's been listening and sharing it, our numbers are going up, so we really appreciate everybody that's sharing the podcast. And to everybody that was on the call, thank you so much for today's conversation. And to everybody listening at home, have a magical week.